Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Willow Grove, episode 3. So this is, like I said, the third episode. If you haven't watched the other two, I definitely recommend it. So in this episode, we will be building some of the Midway buildings. Specifically, it will be a guest service building and then a scooter rental building slash shack. You'll see when I get there. So initially, this whole video was supposed to be the entire Midway, all the other buildings on the Midway besides the wooden coaster station. But then I started recording, and I had 18 hours of footage. And 18 hours of that footage was these two buildings I'm going to build in this building, and then a third building on the other side of the Midway, which is a gift shop. And I had 18 hours, and I still haven't even finished the gift shop yet at the time of recording this. So I think the best way... I think the best way is to split this up into two different buildings. So these two, so the first episode though, I'm focusing on these first two buildings. Like I said, or as I've said before in the previous videos, I'm still trying to really figure out this whole YouTube thing. So it's really hard for me to kind of gauge like when a good cut would be, or where like a good video cut would be to like split stuff into different episodes. So excuse me, I'm still trying to work that out. It's also part of the reason why it took so long for me to get this video out was because I was working on, like I said, initially I was working on just having the whole entire Midway be one building until, like I said, I recently just checked and I had all three, and I had 18 hours and I wasn't even done yet. So yeah, as far as upload schedules go, I'm not saying anything yet because I really don't know I really don't know how to tell if I should even make a good an upload schedule yet. I'm trying to keep it every 2 weeks, but already I've completely failed miserably at that. But I think I'm just going to play it by ear really once I get going along with this thing. I'll try and get something a little more consistent. But obviously in real life, like a lot of things have changed my life. I just started my first full-time job out of college. I just graduated college, so I'm still trying to figure out the whole life living on my own thing. And YouTube is definitely kind of more of one of the new things I've been trying to start. Because after work, one of the nice things about real life, at least to an extent, is that whenever you're done with work for the day, you're done. You don't have to think about it. You hang up your laptop or put your laptop away and you can just do whatever you want. It's not like college where there's always that just lingering fear. So that's pretty nice. But anyways, yeah, going back to what I'm actually doing though. I'm working on a guest service building right now. So this guest service building was inspired by an Art Deco themed building. So initially, I was going to make the entire Midway kind of an Art Deco themed. And when I say Art Deco, I kind of mean like maybe like that 1930s, like Empire State Building, up to like maybe like more of like a streamlined diner where it's all that stainless steel and has nice curves like an American diner. That was the idea I initially had for this Midway. So I was really trying to build everything, or initially I had the idea of everything would be Art Deco. But then, once I actually started building this building here, which, even though it is technically Art Deco, I'll give you the backstory of this whole building in a minute. Even though it was technically an Art Deco influence I pulled from, it very much more fits the whole Victoria-era wooden coaster station, and the whole like kind of American country classical entrance building. And like I said, the whole reason I'm not doing the whole Art Deco is because I don't think putting all these Art Deco buildings in next to, like I said, the wooden coaster station and the entrance building, which are not Art Deco, I think that would be too much of a difference. Difference in architecture style to the point where I think it would kind of stand out in a bad way. So I think what I'm going to try and stick with more for this Midway is more just kind of just classic amusement park, like 1930s buildings where it is just kind of wood and it looks nice. And maybe it's a little more Victorian style influences with a little bit of here and there thrown in there as well. When I say here and there, I mean like different architecture styles. So, when you look at like different parks around the world, one that definitely comes to mind where it has all kinds of different architecture styles whenever you first walk in is Cedar Point. And up in Sandusky, Ohio. So if you ever look at the buildings on that Midway, it is a hodgepodge of everything as you go down the stretch. Like I know when you first walk in on the left side, there's these like they look like these buildings that are from like New Orleans, Mardi Gras. They look very much like French Quarters influenced. But then if you go a little bit further down, you have like an Asian pagoda for some reason. I don't know if it's Chinese or Japanese. I'm not very good at telling the difference. But yeah, there's just like an Asian pagoda just kind of chilling there. And then also along the Midway, there's a Johnny Rockets, which is themed to a 50s diner. And I always kind of like that about a lot of classic amusement parks that are like that, where it really is just a big hodgepodge of just different themes and just building styles and architecture styles, just kind of all thrown in the same general area. But the one difference I will say between Cedar Point and my little Midway here is that the Cedar Point Midway is huge, so it definitely makes more so things can kind of still fit together because it's so much bigger. Things are expanded out. You can kind of have a little bit smoother of a transition. While this my little Midway here, it's kind of tiny, so I don't want to have a bunch of different building themes all in this packed, condensed area. But as the park goes along, especially once you cross the creek, and I continue building that way, I definitely want to try and put in some more true Art Deco pieces and different art building styles. Like I definitely want to build an Asian pagoda at some point because I feel like that's kind of a staple for classic amusement parks for whatever reason. But yeah, so anyways, going back with what I'm building here, again, this building was based off of an Art Deco influence. What I did is I wanted to try and find some reference images to kind of base it off of, and I googled 1930s Art Deco World's Fair. And what came up was this building from, I think it was maybe a French World's Fair I don't really know what the building was, but it had those two spires with the bullseyes on top, or posts, or whatever we want to call it. I'll put the picture of the building up on screen right now. So there it is. That's the building that I was inspired the current building I'm working on. You can see it looks very similar. I almost recreated it. Maybe not one-to-one, but I definitely feel like it's more of a recreation than it was a inspiration at this point, honestly. But yeah, no. So I went down the rabbit hole and did a little bit more research on the building, and pretty much what I found was that it was for a 1930s World's Fair, l'Exposition de Liege. I'm probably ruining that pronunciation. It's either French or Belgium, the fair, but the company that sponsored it was, like I said, a cigarette company, and it's actually, I'm reading the page right now, it's actually a Belgium cigarette company. And not that I endorse smoke or anything, but I think it's a really cool building. And anyways, what I found about the company, the other than it's just a cigarette company, a soft cigarette company, was that the logo was really cool. It was basically a bullseye. And pretty much this bullseye, it had a black center, and then after the black circle was a yellow circle, and then surrounding that yellow circle and everything else was a red circle. And I just thought it was a really unique, just looking building in general. And like I say, even though I don't really necessarily endorse smoking, I do think it's pretty cool. It definitely makes sense back in the 1930s, when everyone smoked, that a cigarette company would be one to sponsor a building for a World's Fair. So that's pretty much all I really found. The company was called Boule National. But either way, that's what this building was inspired off of. And I thought it's just a really cool looking building. And I think it fit in with the rest of the buildings in the park. Because like I said, even though this was kind of technically an Art Deco influence, and even though it wasn't as Art Deco as like the Empire State Building or like a 50s American diner, like I said. So I think it still fits in pretty nicely. It doesn't like completely like just break the rest with what's going on with the rest of the buildings. But yeah, so anyways, as I was building this, I think one of the things I like to point out is, as always with these time lapses, I'm trying to make it more of like a highlights reel. I'm not trying to show every single little board I place down. And one of the things I just kind of realized, like as I was watching this like recording, is that a lot of the meat of the building, where like the actually exciting things are happening, is really towards the beginning of the building. Here's, like I said, at the beginning here, that's when I was like trying to figure out like, all right, what do these spires look like? How do I want these walls to be detailed? What colors the foundation? What colors the top of the roofs? What do these columns look like? It's definitely something where it's definitely a lot more experimental at the very beginning, but then as time goes on, it really just turns more into just kind of a copy and paste game, where you're really just taking what you've already built and just kind of like placing it throughout different points along the building. Because, like, for example, this left wing I'm working on right here, with the custom with the custom windows and the foundations and stuff, whenever I brought that over to the right wing, it's a symmetric building. So all I did was just, I really just copy and pasted, or I wasn't able to copy and paste because it mirrored, but I really just took what I built on the left side, saw what I did, and just built it mirrored on the other side. So that was one of the things where I really ended up just cutting out completely from this building, because you'll see the right wing is now suddenly built. It's just because, again, I'm just trying to tell the best story of how I'm building this park. So I really don't see the point of showing me place down every single little board. But Yeah, like I say, I just thought it was interesting. I really, once you get an idea for building and start and build out like the base things, like the walls, the roofs, and everything else, it really just does become a copy and paste game. There's another point of building that I only bother showing on the video is the whole backside of building. Again, I really just copy and paste that around, and I remove those windows and just turn them into just solid walls. There's really nothing exciting going on there. It's just one of the things. Another thing I cut is even when I sped it up 10 times. I still had like over an hour of footage. So, yeah, but like I said, I just thought it was kind of interesting. So anyways, going on with this building in general, you see me right there, there I am. That's when I searched up the cigarette company, and that's when I found like that is actually yellow and black, so the paint wash that I changed all of that. Let's see, but yeah, so anyways, future plans of the Midway in general, like I said, I'm building a guest services and a scooter rental building at the start. And what I'm going to do on the other side is I'm going to build a big gift shop, because I feel like that's a staple at the entrance of any park or near the entrance. You have to have a big gift shop. So I'm building a big gift shop, which I've already started. It takes up most of the other Midway side. And it's going to be kind of cool because I'm using the Planet Coaster gift shop things for the first time in it. And that's really the first time I've ever actually like messed around with those little with the shelves and everything. So I thought that looked really cool. I did like a full interior on it, which I think I'm excited to show because I'm really happy with how it turned out. And I think outside of that, probably everything I'll put on the Midway. On one side, I want to put another bathroom, which even though I already have a bathroom at the park entrance, that's outside the park. So you definitely need another bathroom inside the park so people don't have to exit the park and get their hands stamped or something to go use the bathroom if they're in this general area. And I guess the same thing kind of applies with this guest service building too, because I mean, there's a guest service building in the entrance area as well. But again, you don't want to have people leaving the park to go visit guest services. That's just not how real life works. And most parks usually do have two guest services, one inside the park and one outside the park, and maybe even multiple inside the park, so you don't have to walk all the way around. But yeah, so anyways, yeah, I'm gonna have another bathroom on the other side of Midway. That's gonna be kind of just like a boring throwaway building. And then on the other side of the gift shop, I think I'm going to have a nice little ice cream stand, and I want to have maybe like a little like garden, maybe like a little like kind of garden area for people to sit in. That I think will look really nice. And like I said, you go along a creek too, so I think having that garden area around the creek will be pretty nice. In general, though, like I said, with the whole philosophy of all these buildings I'm building on the Midway, I really have like two types of building in my mind that I'm building. The first is the ones that I really want people to look at, which would be definitely like this guest service building, the wooden coaster station, and the gift shop I'm eventually going to build. And then there's the other buildings which I really don't care if people look at it or not. They're really just kind of there to fill in the space. And the next building I build along here, that's going to be the scooter rental. I definitely did not put as much time as making that building as I did with this gift shop. And I think the idea is that, in real life and too, you don't need to be putting all this detail into every single building. Not every single little building is something that I guess necessarily needs to look at. And like this is even true to like Disney to an extent. Obviously Disney puts way more theming and effort into just all their buildings, but even then there's still like some areas where if you look at like a certain building on a main street, it's definitely nothing much to look at. I don't know. It's just a wooden building with some nice little decor. I think it's just just to save costs, and two, I don't think you want to clutter. It's just my own kind of personal theory, I guess I should say, but you don't want to clutter. The clutter area of the parks where there's almost so much to look at, it's almost too much to take in. So I think having like a nice balance of things to look at, to draw your attention to, and things to just kind of ignore, I think that's a good theory to follow. Anyways, though, moving on. So here I'm doing the interior of this building. So what I'd like to do first is I like to make this counter completely all one piece. To do that, I just use a nice little window piece that I think fit nicely between all the countertops and everything. I really enjoy, I think making a custom counter really and hiding just the generic Planet Coaster, a little stand there goes a long way, just because that Planet Coaster stand really isn't, I mean, I guess it's not unrealistic, but like you wouldn't really see a park where it's just a dinky little table kind of set up as a full guest information stand, especially when they're all lined up in a row. Maybe you would see a stand like that just kind of in the middle of a building that's like a temporary setup for maybe like a special events going on or something like that. But I think really, if this is a permanent fixture, you would really want that to be like a full countertop. So another thing I did, just add in some wall lights here. I think it really looked pretty nice, put everything together. And then I also cut the building in half on the inside. I wanted that to act more as more as, what's the word, as like an employee-only area, maybe like a little break room or a place where they can do paperwork without being disturbed by customers. In parks, there's definitely a lot of behind-the-scenes going on that you don't really need guests seeing and or interfering with. So I figured that'd be a nice little like park office area. And then here I am using some of those little bands, like the retractable band fencing, just to make like a little queue line that I thought looked pretty nice. Then here I am placing in a little printer I made. That's the one thing I've made that I've used all over the park already in a couple of my other creations. I think it's kind of nice. I think a little office, there should always be a printer or two. And then I'm starting in some normal file cabinets that I've used throughout the park as well. These were taken from the workshop. I don't know who put them in, but I think they're pretty nice. Throw in some clipboards, and then this is cool. I had a little idea. You can now put in custom images from whatever you want into the game and put them onto the video screens. So I found an image of a bulletin board, and I threw that in to make it look like, again, just like a little cork board. Used some wooden pieces there to just kind of like frame out the rest of it so it doesn't just look like an image on a TV screen. And I threw up some post-it notes on it and maybe some like fake papers. Don't really know what the organization process is, but I think that looks like something you would probably see in like a park office. And it's definitely something I've seen before. And then this was the other idea I had. Going off of that, I had an idea where what if I had like paintings up or photographs of the park around the actual the park I'm working on right now, just around the guest services building. So what I did is I literally just screenshotted the park, put on a black and white filter, and just threw them on video screens. I really like how this turned out. I just think this is something you'd probably see in real life, where it's old historic images of the park, or of an amusement park, just plastered up on the wall. I just think that looks pretty cool. It adds kind of like a more personal touch to things compared to maybe just trying to find like a stock image online. And then one other issue I found with this game is that for every reason, all the employees get stuck on that path inside the guest service building. I don't know why that's happening, but it got to the point where every single employee got stuck on that path piece, so I fired everyone, and I honestly just turned off the need for having staff members, which is kind of annoying, and I feel like it's kind of another big bug, but I don't know, it's the path. It's something with the paths, and what else is new? There's always issues with the paths, so it is what it is. But either way, moving on, here you see me building a scooter rental building. And I say building in kind of quotes, really, because this building is nothing more than just a shack, just with a wooden structure on it. And the reason it's just a shack with nothing really else going on is because the whole point of this building is to hold mobility scooters. So either that's powered scooters or maybe just mobility for guests in general, which could be wheelchairs too. That's the other thing I ended up putting in this building. And the whole point of this building, so guests can come up here who might have trouble moving around freely or walking, so they can rent out a little mobility scooter or a wheelchair, and they can do that right at the start of the park. This is something that I saw in real life at Dollywood. This is probably the first time I ever went to Dollywood. I was maybe like 8 years old, so I barely remember. All I know is that whenever I was walking into the park, I looked over and there was just like one building that was just filled to the brim with mobility scooters, and it looked like a sea of mobility scooters all the way to the back. And that's all I even remember of it. But I always thought that was cool, and I figured this would be something to put in the entrance area of the park, because I often struggle to figure out like what like actual park buildings for guest services and that sort of deal I actually need to put in, other than like a bathroom and a guest service stand. So I figured this would be a pretty good one to throw in there. But like I said, because this really is just to house mobility scooters, all it really is just two sheds, or really just two shacks that just have pulled a roof over them. And then I didn't show it on camera, but I ended up extending the first one and making the second one to wrap around, because I figured, a park this size, you probably would need more than just that single little shack. So it's two shacks now, and here's me putting in all the wheelchairs now. These wheelchair models in general, I found them on the workshop again. I don't remember the name of the person who created it, so sorry about that, but you did a great job. The only thing I didn't like the lights he put on the electric scooters, so I ended up taking those off. But yeah, I'm really happy with how this turned out. I think that look I was going for was pretty much exactly what I envisioned in my head. Like, it's a nice simple building, a little wooden frame structure. That's just really just to keep all those mobility scooters out of the rain, and wheelchairs as well. So going into the facade I put on this building, so the facade, well, if you don't know, a facade is really just a fake building front. You see this all the time at like Disney World and all your Universals. Most of the buildings are just meant to look pretty on the front end, and behind end or back end that guests can't really see, it doesn't really matter. This one is definitely a pure facade, while the guest service building is kind of more a full, well-rounded building. The idea was that guest service building was built whenever the park was more of just a trolley park, and really there could be like picnic rows behind the building, so it needs to look good on all four ends. Well, this building here is really maybe built after it became more of an amusement park, and this could just be like a fake building front. But either way, with this facade, again, I looked off of inspiration on real life, and what I ended up finding was a picture of the Kennywood Jackrabbit, I believe back in the 1930s. I'll put this picture up on the screen right now. So yeah, there's the Jackrabbit station. This is the part where after the roller coaster, I guess, leaves the station where people load, it does a 180-degree turn. This is at the end of that 180-degree turn coming out of the station area there. And I just thought it looked really cool. It was a nice throwback back to that 30s architecture that I really kind of think this is a lot of the buildings in this park is kind of going after. And I just thought it'd be a nice little facade to kind of just have something to make the scooter rental shacks look not ugly, and fit in with the rest of the Midway buildings. Because really, I was really struggling to come up with an idea for what this building should look like. Because it's not like it's this very interesting thing that it's doing. It's just scooter rentals. But either way, I thought this is a pretty cool inspiration. So yeah, like I said, this is probably the building inspiration is probably from the 30s, and all really was just this flat front with a lot of woodworking going on. Really, in my case here, I use a lot of those just the really thin wooden planks that are in the supports. I've used this piece a lot. In general, all those like wooden support pieces, I've used a ton of them throughout through this park. It's getting to the point where I think I maybe need to force myself to stop using them so I can get a little more creative and things can kind of stop looking. Because if I use it everywhere, I think a lot of my buildings are going to start looking very similar. But in this case, I think for what I was going for, this is definitely the best option. So you see me adding the border around here, and then once the border is complete, and then add a little white highlight going around it, which I think adds like a really nice pop to everything. And yeah, now further along, I do the back of this, like if you scroll the camera around and look at the back from where this facade meets the rest of the roof, looks really ugly. Off camera, I do hide all that, but that was just one of the things I cut whenever I was editing, just because I don't think it's very interesting to watch. And like I said, I'm really just trying to tell a story for how best, to show how this park is being built without maybe showing every single nitty-gritty detail. But yeah, then once that was pretty much done, I just put in some nice little polygons to kind of just fill in the space a little more, so it's not just this big blue wall of wood. And I think that turned out really nice. And then once I get over to just putting on the scooter rental sign, one of the little tricks I did to add a little bit more depth to the sign that I'm really happy with how it turned out was I made it say scooter rentals in white. And then kind of how that Jackrabbit sign is, I made a black, I copy and pasted the sign, made it black, and I just offset it slightly from the poppy sign, or the light colored sign, to give it like a little shadow. And you'll see right there, I think it really, I think it really fits in nicely there. So yeah, that was pretty much the end of pretty much this building. The last little thing I did right here was I made a little computer stand. I realized that, if an employee needs to be, manning the station, I guess you could say, and, renting out these scooters. And I would imagine if you're renting out scooters, you probably need to have some kind of electronic, inventory system just to keep track of what scooters are out and what scooters are in, and anything else, just like what scooters might need maintenance. So I just made this little booth. It's really nothing fancy. I just use a wooden crate as a template, and then just put on, again, those wooden support pieces, which I need to stop using because I've used them so much. Just so the guy has somewhere to stand. And then I found a nice little computer setup to put on top of the wooden crate, which I, again, pulled off the workbench. And it's a great model, so I just threw that on top, and I think it looked pretty good. I definitely am using the workbench for a lot of little things in the park, like little details such as like this computer here. My theory when it comes to using the workshop is don't use it to put in buildings or anything major, but when it comes to just little details such as like a computer, I don't have any issues using it instead of trying to create my own computer, because I'm not here to build a computer. I'm here to build an amusement park, And then last little thing, again, this building here, the guest services building, was meant to be more of a building that was when the park was a picnic grove, so you would see the back of this. So kind of pay homage to that, I made like a nice little tiny little garden area with a little fountain that maybe employees would be able to walk around as they're entering, the guest service building for their day of work. And also, you could see this area from the queue of the wooden coaster, so I figured I should make it look presentable for the guests who are waiting in line for the wooden coaster. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna leave you guys off with a few cinematics, and I will see you guys in episode 4, which should be a lot quicker to get out since most of that stuff is already built.